Number 10, Barbara Gordon. So this one has a weird and complicated history with fans. You see, it all started during Batman Beyond, which is an amazing animated series. If you haven't seen it, watch that right now. It was hinted that Bruce and Barbara, aka Batgirl, had a romantic past. Fans really didn't know how to think about that, but they just kind of let it slide, because you know, what else? But didn't stop there. In the animated film adaptation of the comic book The Killing Joke, the two took their relationship to the next level. Now, a lot of fans just attribute this relationship to Bruce Timm, who was the creator of the whole, DCEU, DC Animated Universe, and he was a producer on the Killing Joke animated film. For some reason, he just really wanted to see those characters together. Regardless, I just don't think that this is a relationship that fans will ever really get on board with. But it had to be on the list. Number 9, Chase Meridian. Chase is a psychologist and was introduced in the film Batman Forever. She was played by Nicole Kidman when Val Kilmer was Batman. Now, regardless of what you think of this film, one of the things that everyone agrees on is that they really enjoyed Chase. She had a really interesting and complex relationship with both Bruce and Batman. She eventually figured out, that the two were the same person. She only appeared in one film, but in 2013 she did make her debut in the comics. It would have been interesting to see where they would have taken her as a character and her relationship with Bruce, but unfortunately that never ended up happening. Batman and Robin ended up happening, and we all know how that turned out. Number 8, Talia al Ghul. This is probably one of the more complex relationships of Batman's career, if you could even call it a relationship at all. So Batman has never trusted the League of Assassins. That's not, new information. But he has tried to work with Talia from time to time. But the thing is, Talia wanted a kid. In her eyes, a kid with Batman would be the perfect combination. They ended up having a kid together, Damian Wayne. Although it's kind of implied that she drugged Batman and that's how Damian happened. I think all fans agree that this is definitely not one of Bruce's healthiest relationships. Number 7, Wonder Woman. Sometimes office romances happen, even with superheroes. That is what happened here. You see, Batman and Wonder Woman are both founding members of the Justice League, and the two of them spend a lot of time together, so it should come as no surprise that they ended up dating just for a little bit. I mean, they even kissed during the Justice League animated cartoon. And there's definitely some flirtation between Bruce and Diana in the DCEU. I mean, we saw it briefly in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and we didn't really see it in the theatrical release Justice League film. I mean, there were hints of it, but we'll probably see a lot more of it in, the Snyder Cut, or Zack Snyder's Justice League as it is now called. But only time will tell with that one. Number 6, Silver St. Cloud. Silver actually has a really interesting history with Bruce. They both have money, and that's how the two of them met. They started dating, and eventually, she found out Bruce was Batman, which seems to be a trend here. And that is actually why it ended. Silver didn't want to see something bad happen to Bruce. If she was with him, she would always have to worry that, he would never come home at night. And that is something she just didn't want to do. Which automatically makes this different than a lot of other people on the list. I wonder if Silver will end up making her way into Matt Reeves' new Batman trilogy. I mean, he has a lot of other characters coming in, but this one would be, kind of something interesting and new. Number 5, Poison Ivy. So lots of people can't resist Poison Ivy. Partly because she can make men fall in love with her with this spell. And that is exactly what happened with Batman. I mean, can you really see Batman just dating her? They have a completely different view on everything. So it wouldn't really work. I mean, and it's not only Batman she has made fall in love with her. It's also Superman as well. So she can literally make anyone fall in love with her. Unless you have those fake lips on like a Batman and Robin, then you're good. Just everyone get some of those fake lips. Because Batman and Robin teaches us a lot. Number 4, SASHA BORDEAUX. SASHA was actually Bruce Wayne's former bodyguard. Yeah, even Bruce Wayne needs a bodyguard, guys. She was actually sentenced to Blackgate after her and Bruce were accused of killing Vesper Fairchild, which they actually didn't. But she ended up finding out who Bruce Wayne was, and the two of them actually trained together on multiple occasions. She wanted to become a vigilante, and she ended up going out with Batman to fight crime. Their relationship didn't really last long, but even when she did go to prison, she never ended up giving Bruce his identity, which instantly shows you just how much she cares for him. Number 3, Vicky Vale. Vicky Vale is one of Batman's oldest relationships. She's also one of the more famous ones because she was the one to make her debut in Tim Burton's 1989 film, Batman, starring Michael Keaton, which was a massive success. Vicky is a reporter that works for the Gotham Gazette. Like many others on this list, They weren't together long, but Vicky holds a special place in a lot of Batman's fans' hearts for being the first one to debut on the big screen. She didn't appear in other movies, but it was a big deal when she first showed up in the film. Number 2, Rachel Dawes. Like Chase Meridian, Rachel was first created for the films. Rachel made her debut in Batman Begins, where she was actually played by Katie Holmes, but then she was recasted in The Dark Knight with Maggie Gyllenhaal, which, is the version that people remember more. Rachel has become one of The Dark Knight's most famous love interests because both films she appeared in are considered to be Batman's best film. And she was a childhood friend of Bruce who found out, eventually he was Batman. But they couldn't be together until the world didn't need Batman anymore. She then went on, started dating Harvey Dent during The Dark Knight, and ultimately chose to be with him before, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, she got killed by the Joker. It was a tragic end to their love story because Bruce was ready to give up everything for her. But Rachel will always remain one of his most famous loves, even though, it was kind of brief and ended really badly. Number 1, Catwoman. Was there ever any doubt? Come on, guys. I think everyone predicted this. I think everyone knew that Selena Kyle was going to be number 1 on this list. Her romance with Batman is famous. The two of them have had an on and off again relationship for such a long time and shared a bond that you just don't see with anyone else. They were going to get married, guys. They were going to get married, but Selena left Bruce at the altar saying that he couldn't be Batman and be happy, so she had to leave, which left fans devastated. Come on! Can Bruce ever catch a break? Probably not. Although, some are still holding out hope that they will be together again, and maybe Bruce will finally be happy. Who knows? But it seems like the writers don't want to take him in that general direction because they just want to keep pushing a mopey Batman, which is still a cool version of Batman, but come on. He could be happy. Bruce can be happy, guys.
Number 10, Sasha Bordeaux. I actually really like Sasha, and even her relationship with Batman, I don't mind. It's more the premise of sort of how she was introduced and got involved with Bruce Wayne. Sasha was hired on to be Bruce Wayne's bodyguard, which, I guess, okay, but does Bruce Wayne even need a bodyguard if he's Batman? Also, is it wise to hire a bodyguard when you have a secret identity and would then need to try and sort of sneak around them to just kind of keep that identity a secret? Just seems a little strange. Sasha ended up teaming up with Batman after she discovered his secret identity, and another weird thing there is that she actually could keep up with bats, when he usually spends years training people to be able to even keep up with him. These two had a very brief romance, which would get dropped almost as soon as it was kind of introduced to us. Number 9, Catwoman. I know what you might be thinking, but Amanda, Cat and Bat is a classic. So classic, in fact, that we even have a Batcat Black Label series going on right now at DC. And hey, I agree with you, but the fact of the matter remains that the idea of Batman, who very passionately stands up for justice, ending up with a consistent criminal and thief like Catwoman doesn't really make a ton of sense. If we go back to that original meeting, you'd actually see just how ridiculous this relationship is in theory, and how crazy it is that Catwoman was able to get away just because Batman was attracted to her. In fact, this has kind of become a weird trope in the comics where when Selena does something criminal, Batman is usually still willing to kind of let her off. He'll be like, don't do that, Selena, but in the end, he's probably just gonna let her get away with it. I don't think he would act the same way if Mr. Freeze was stealing diamonds. Do you? Number 8, Silver St. Cloud. I honestly like Bruce and Silver together. Of course, weirdness does have to come into this relationship because Batman is never allowed to be happy. Weirdness came in the form of dramatic tragedy, which, let's be honest, is looming around the corner in pretty much every relationship Batman has. The particularly strange thing here is that Batman didn't seem to see it coming at all. He had begun to open up to trust both Silver and his new partner, Baphomet, even thinking of perhaps retiring. Obviously, letting his guard down was a huge mistake as it resulted in Silver's death, which really sucks because, this means that it will make it even harder for Bats to actually let people in again in the future, as if it wasn't hard enough for him. Poor Batman, he just can't get a break. Number 7, Batwoman, but not Kate Kane Batwoman, because that would be pretty weird considering that she's gay and she's also Batman's cousin. Instead, we're talking here about Kathy Kane, the first Batwoman who was introduced in the 1950s, because people were worried Batman was turning kids gay. Oh, the shock, the horror. Wait, so is that how I ended up gay? Not only is the reasoning behind why Kathy Kane needed to show up and date Batman pretty freaking weird, but also the idea that Kathy Kane would really be interested in Batman is also a little strange. It seemed like she never really needed a partner, so the relationship there felt a little bit forced. Still, it didn't stop writers from turning Kathy into a marriage-obsessed partner in crime and in romance, because that was the 50s in comics. Everyone's like, I'll trick him into marrying me. Number 6, Zatanna Zatara. The weird part of these two together is that it's never really happened. Instead, we've only got teases about this and seen that both Bruce and Zatanna definitely have feelings for one another that they never really fully commit to acting on. I mean, maybe they had a thing when they were teenagers, but that's about it. That's the weirdest thing for me, because I do feel like Bruce and Zatanna would actually make a pretty good couple together, and probably dating Zatanna would open up Batman to a whole new magical world. I mean, sure, he's dabbled in magic before, but he's never really like fully dove into that. See, I'm diving again. What's up with that? Similarly to how he seems to approach his relationship with his longtime friend and possible lover Zatanna herself. Just kind of like putting a toe in. It's not gonna fully jump in that pool. Number 5, Julia Pennyworth. Maybe the most awkward relationship that Batman has had, if we can call it a relationship. Well, maybe not the most awkward actually, because there's been some pretty bad ones, but this one is definitely up there. Julia Pennyworth is Alfred's daughter, and she had a thing for Batman. Although he never really reciprocated the feelings, this was still a strange one. Especially the one moment when Julia kisses Batman after he saves her in front of his girlfriend Vicky Vale, who did not yet know that Bruce Wayne was Batman, making her line about approving of Julia's moves where she kisses Batman, so long as the recipient wasn't Bruce Wayne, pretty awkward, because yeah, we all know that he is Bruce Wayne. Yikes! Number 4, Black Canary. Definitely one of the weirdest ones out there, because we usually associate Black Canary with Green Arrow, which wouldn't that cause some bad blood between Green Arrow and Batman, who are usually both on the Justice League? You bet it would. These two have been shipped together in the comics a few times. One of the strangest times, though, has to be in All-Star Batman and Robin, when they hooked up after Batman had a sexy display of his brute force and strength, which left Black Canary unable to resist him. I mean, I get that Batman is totally hot, as Black Canary calls him, and that he just helped Canary out there. He kind of like saved her. But I feel like it should take more than just that violent act for Black Canary to jump all over him. But hey, this is All-Star Batman, so no. The fact that Batman also seems to be thinking of Catwoman the whole time as well makes it a pretty awkward tumble around the smashed up docks. Goddamn, as Frank Miller would say. Number 3, Poison Ivy. If you thought the relationship between Harley Quinn and Batman or Bruce Wayne was weird on the part 1 of this list, you are not going to believe the weirdness of Poison Ivy and the Bats together on this list. These two together are just weird because there isn't a lot of consistency. It really depends on who's writing as to what kind of relationship they have. Sometimes Ivy loves Batman. Sometimes she hates him and is willing to kill him. Sometimes she's his ally, and sometimes she's a full-on criminal. I mean, I'm not against her character evolving and changing, but it's this weird back and forth as opposed to like any straight up progression or evolution that makes this one really weird for me. I'm okay if she's a relationship with Batman, but can we just like evolve that and like kind of commit to that and make that an overarching thing? And I'm okay if she's like, I want to kill Batman, but then can we just make that like more killing and overarching villainy for her? I don't know. Number 2, Becca. This one was just pretty random. Also, it relates to some of the manipulation tactics that we've seen characters like Poison Ivy use on Batman, which is both weird and also is kind of creepy. Becca was the wife of the new god Orion, son of Darkseid. Her powers basically allow her to create desire in those who turn away from love, even though Batman has actually welcomed love on more than a few occasions. I think he's just in denial about it. But anyways, her powers also apparently create desire in her as well. How convenient. Needless to say, these two had a short relationship caused by her weird powers before she inevitably went back to being with Orion. Number 1, Nocturna. Just when you think it can't get any weirder, it most definitely can when we are talking Batman. Nocturna is a weird choice for not only Batman, but years later for Batwoman, Kate Kane, too. Especially considering that her and Batman had a thing. although I guess it's a different continuity. Batwoman and Nocturna have an even more stranger and problematic relationship, but this time around, we're here to talk about Batman. These two together weren't that terrible, actually, and Natalia Knight, aka Nocturna, even became a sort of mother figure to Jason Todd. Or wait, does that make their relationship weirder? Because I think it does. In the end, she was stabbed to death, but managed to get into a hot air balloon and soar over Gotham just as she died and passed into a red storm. I guess so she could have like one last nice view before bleeding out. Don't worry though, Nocturna would return as an actual vampire as opposed to just a vampire-themed character, who would then move from Batman to Batwoman. Man, that sounds like a weird dating like game show that I would not want to be on. Or maybe I would want to be on it. I don't know, who could I date from Gotham? There's some pretty cool people. Selena, Bruce. Although I don't know, Batman has a lot of problems. I think I just want to be friends with him. I don't think I'd want to date him. Number 10, Julie Madison. Not so much weird in the way her romance with Bruce went, especially considering this tends to be how most of them go. But Julie Madison had probably one of the weirdest romances because she was Bruce's first love that no one really ever talks about now. Julie Madison was first introduced in Detective Comics Volume Number 1 in issue 31. She was a socialite and later an actress originally who often played the role of damsel in distress in stories featuring her, where she would then need to be rescued by Batman. She also was dating and engaged to Bruce Wayne himself, but broke off their engagement because Bruce wouldn't get a real job, not knowing that, well, he was Batman. Although also kind of a weird criticism coming from a socialite, but I guess Julie had the job of an actress, working under the stage name Portia Storm, and Bruce being the owner of Wayne Enterprises maybe didn't count. Granted, of course, Wayne Enterprises wouldn't actually be introduced in the comics until 1987, and Bruce does respond with the fact that he simply cannot be bothered with anything remotely connected with work. So yeah, I kind of get her mentality. She was like, "You gonna get a real job?" And he was like, "Girl, I have so much money, no." It's a fair response, but it's a fair concern. Number 9, Wonder Woman. These two are just kind of weird together because, well, they're not really on the same playing field. That being said, a lot of people love Batman and Wonder Woman together and heartily ship them, but for me, I personally think Wonder Woman is better without a man in her life. Even Steve Trevor, who often ends up being her mainstay love interest throughout many of her series. Diana and Bruce, beyond heroics, also don't really share a lot in common, and while Bruce likely has much to gain from being in a relationship with Diana in terms of what he can learn and how he can grow as an individual with her, I don't think Wonder Woman has as much to gain from him. Not to like super diss Bruce or anything like that, or Batman. Not to mention Bruce's terrible track record when it comes to, well, how he tends to treat his romantic partners, so might not be good. Although maybe Wonder Woman would put him in his place, but Alright friends, before we move on to this next point, if you want more weird love and lists like this, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8, Jim Gordon. In the Harley Quinn animated series, while the romance between Jim Gordon and Batman isn't quite official, it's still kind of implied that Jim has a bit of a thing for Batman. Or might, if he considered what his intense feelings potentially mean. In this show, we see Commissioner Gordon on the brink of a mental break, almost completely unhinged, bags under his eyes, ranting at just about anyone who will listen to him about his distraught personal life and emotional baggage. He also just really likes to drink. He often turns to Batman, hoping he'll be his BFF, or more seeing him as his BFF and hoping he'll be there, and hoping he'll be that shoulder to cry on for him. But Batman only sees Jim as his co-worker in the series. However, he does begrudgingly agree to be friends with Commissioner Gordon near the end of the Season 1 episode, "You're a damn good cop, Jim Gordon," in order to get Jim to give up Clayface's arm, who he has intensely befriended. Yeah, also if you haven't seen Harley Quinn the animated series, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it. It's so good. Number 7, Talia al Ghul. Even if you ship these two together, you have to admit how weird their relationship really is, especially when it comes to them having a child together, where all versions of how that went down are just really messed up and involve people having really weirdly positive feelings at times about things that should not be considered positive. The most well-known child of theirs together being Damian Wayne, who Talia forced herself on Bruce to get. pretty awful. Add in the fact that they both come from two different sides of the tracks, and it makes for a messy romance, which for some works. I think Catwoman and Batman actually managed to not always see eye to eye and make it really work between them, but Talia and Bruce not having a lot of compromise between them makes it much more challenging. Also, she forced herself on him to get a son! This is not okay. Not okay. Not okay. Number 6, Andrea Beaumont. Andrea Beaumont in the animated universe was a young love of Bruce's. The two fell in love during their time together at Gotham University. Good old Gotham U. And were even engaged to be married, but Andrea had to break off the engagement as she and her father were leaving to go to Europe. Her father, you see, was involved in a criminal money laundering racket and had stolen money from the mob bosses that he worked for, turning that into a profitable fortune all its own. To escape his insidious partners who would kill him if they found out about his theft and found out that he was leaving, he left Gotham and hid himself and Andrea in Europe. Eventually, her father's location was sold out and he ended up being murdered by those he'd betrayed years before. Andrea, unable to accept this injustice, took her father's fortune and used it to train and get equipment to turn herself into the masked vigilante known as the Phantasm, returning to Gotham years later to get revenge on those responsible for her father's death. She also returned as Andrea Beaumont, claiming she had some accounts to settle and once again ran into her old flame, Bruce Wayne. Eventually, the two discovered one another's identities, Bruce Wayne as Batman and Andrea as the Phantasm. This revelation actually dramatically surprised Batman, especially as he had suspected that the Phantasm was a man. We all suspected that just because how the Phantasm looked, and then we were like, huh, there you go. Don't judge a book by its cover. Just because someone looks like a man doesn't mean they are a man. Gender pronouns. Look at this. We're having revelations here. Number 5, Jezebel Jet. One of the weirdest relationships Batman has had by far. His relationship with Jezebel Jet is strange considering all the revelations it came with. Jezebel was originally presented as the leader of a small nation, and, well, she was the leader of a small nation, but she was also secretly working for the evil organization known as the Black Glove, or, well, maybe not so secretly, apparently. Jezebel initially rebuked Bruce's advances when they first met, claiming she did not want to be another notch on his bedpost, but eventually the two did end up dating, and it even got serious enough that rumors spread of a potential proposal and engagement between the two. However, that definitely was not meant to be, as Jezebel ended up betraying Bruce, and I put that in air quotes because, well, Batman would actually later claim that he knew of her true allegiance and that she was planning to betray him all along, and that their whole seemingly real relationship from both sides had therefore been faked. How confusing. Number 4, Harley Quinn. We have seen some pretty flirty moments happen between these two across various comics, both in the main continuity and outside of it. In the alternate world of White Knight, Harley and Bats even seem to be moving towards some kind of romantic relationship or love connection after the death of Jack Napier, who was once the Joker, then reformed, and then lost his mind kind of again before he passed away. Recently, we've seen Batman and Harley teaming up during Joker War, and they've had some kind of strange and seemingly intimate, emotional moments together. Although nothing physical ever happened between the two, unless it happened off panel or something. But definitely some emotional stuff is happening there. There's some relationship building. While Harley has always had a thing for Bruce Wayne, she has no interest in Batman, and so it really seems weird to me when writers or fans seem interested in matching these two up. Because like Harley with Bruce Wayne I could maybe see, but like Harley with Batman. Number 3, Ra's al Ghul. Am I gonna talk about this weird kiss? Well, you bet I'm gonna talk about this weird kiss. During Batman Beyond, Ra's comes up with the perfect scheme to preserve his own life after the Lazarus Pit failed to restore him. He takes over Talia's body and goes to Bruce disguised as her, attempting to seduce Bruce into agreeing to treatments which will see his youth and his strength restored to him. While under the guise of Talia, at one point Ra's even kisses Bruce to really sell this to him. Later, it's revealed what Ra's was really up to, hoping to de-age Bruce and swap bodies with him, returning to Gotham posing as the son of Talia and Bruce. Fortunately, Batman, Terry McGinnis, stops him, and even Bruce seems weirded out by the fact that Ra's in Talia's body made out with him. Which, yeah, that's weird. right? Number 2, Cheetah. In the Justice League animated series, Cheetah and Batman have a really weird, sexy moment together. Master of Seduction, Batman, is obviously meant to be playing Cheetah here, and she totally falls for it, sealing their newfound respect for one another with a kiss. It is also heavily implied here that Batman has a cat fetish. I'll let you be the judge on that one, though I suspect there might actually be something more to that bit than it just being something you say to manipulate a cat lady like Cheetah. Number 1, Barbara Gordon. I mean, if we are talking about weird Batman ships and relationships, this has to be one of the weirdest ones out there. Honestly, if you think Batman and Robin are weird, this is on the same level as that. Barbara Gordon is also known as Batgirl, a member of the Bat family and Batman's protege and sidekick. She's also known for being the longtime love interest of Dick Grayson, who to Batman is like a son. She is also known for being the daughter of Commissioner Jim Gordon, Batman's colleague and his friend. And yet, outside the main continuity, Batman and Batgirl have slept together and had a relationship. At one point in Batman Beyond 2.0, the digital comic series, Bruce even got Babs pregnant while Dick was out of town in a flashback story. Awkward for so many reasons. While it's important to consider this is an alternate universe and many people therefore don't consider it to be canon, it's still, in my mind, pretty weird and messed up that Bab is part of a love triangle featuring both Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne.
Number 10, Helena Wayne, Earth 2. Before there was Helena Wayne of Earth 2, there was Helena Wayne of Earth 2. Are you confused yet? Are you watching this with subtitles? This version of Helena Wayne was the first child of Catwoman and Batman from Earth 2. The original Earth 2, cause yeah, there's 2 Earth 2s. Look, I don't know what to tell you, it's DC, it's confusing. The original Earth 2 that this Helena Wayne is from was one of the worlds destroyed during Crisis on Infinite Earths. We later would see Earth 2 brought back, but of course slightly different, and technically in a different continuity. But on this Earth 2 that we're talking about, Helena's mother died in a tragic accident when she was blackmailed into returning to a life of crime. This is in part what actually inspired Helena Wayne to fight crime herself, taking up the name Huntress and avenging her mother's death. She tracked down the man responsible and learned that the photo that he had used to blackmail her mother was actually a fake. It showed her mother killing a cop, but in truth, Catwoman had never done such a thing during her time as Catwoman. Huntress in this version of Earth 2 is known for being a skilled fighter, martial artist, and archer. She typically fights with batarangs or a crossbow. Number 9, Helena Wayne, Earth 2. This alternate version of Helena hails from the same reality as Power Girl, who is also her best friend. Helena on Earth 2 is the daughter of Catwoman and Batman. And to be clear, this is the Earth 2 that came after the previous Earth 2 that we just talked about. I hope everyone's following this. I hope you're following this. I wish I had drawn like a diagram for everyone. There's this Earth 2 and there's this Earth 2. Helena here initially fought alongside her father as his Robin. However, she ended up leaving her world in what she thought was the pursuit of Darkseid after her father was killed during a Parademon's attack. Helena had tried to save her dad but was unable to as the tower that he was in exploded, killing him. This version of Helena would spend a lot more time on Prime Earth with Power Girl, who took the name Karen Starr. The two would split up for a while but inevitably rejoin forces and find a way back to their Earth, their home. Back on Earth 2, Helena would take up her father's mantle, eventually becoming the new Batman. And if you're wondering, wait, no, do you mean Batwoman? Did you say that wrong? No, I mean Batman. That is the name that she takes. Batman, just like her dad. Being trained by Batman, Helena has a bunch of skills as his and Catwoman's daughter. She's especially well known for her skills with a crossbow, as an investigator, her stealth, and her fighting prowess. Before becoming Batman while living on Prime Earth, Helena went by the hero name Huntress. All the Helena Waynes, all the Huntresses, all the Bat babies. Bat baby. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about Batman's kids, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. He's got a lot of cool kids, and I'd like to talk more about them. Number 8, Terry McGinnis. Terry is basically Batman in the future. He not only has Batman's genes, but was trained by the old man himself, and he also has future tech to aid him in his missions as well. You might not think of Terry McGinnis as Batman's son, considering, well, he has 2 other parents who raised him and brought him into the world. But Terry is also genetically related to Batman. Amanda Waller helped to create Terry into the man that he is today. She manipulated his father's DNA to make sure that when Terry was conceived, believed his genes would actually match Batman's, aka Bruce Wayne's. This all happened as part of Project Batman Beyond, which was all about building a new Batman to replace the former. Waller also almost had his parents assassinated to help give Terry motivation to become a hero, but Andrea Beaumont's Phantasm, who she hired to do that job, ended up refusing to go through with it. But don't worry, he still becomes Batman anyways. Otherwise, he wouldn't have any skills for me to talk about, I guess. Could you imagine if I just had like most powerful children of Batman and they were all like accountants or something? And I was like, this is a better accountant than the other one. Number 7. Tim Drake. Tim Drake is known for being probably one of the smartest children of Batman around. Although Tim had parents in the original continuity of New Earth, he was adopted by Bruce Wayne. So at least then and there he was considered an adoptive son. In the current continuity, his backstory hasn't become quite as tragic as the former, and I believe his parents are still alive in that reality. Although I think he's still considered Batman's adopted son there too. So he has parents, but he's also adopted? I don't know. While Tim might not be the best marksman or fighter of the bunch of Bat kids, he is definitely the most intelligent and best detective when it comes to living up to Batman's legacy. Does this make him the most powerful? I don't know, it can depend on the mission that he's got, I guess. I would argue that smarts is actually one of the most powerful things or skills you can possess when it comes to heroics, but many others often measure power in how hard you can hit. So even though I kinda wanna put Tim Drake higher on this list, I feel like there's gonna be a lot of people that are gonna be like, but he's not the biggest muscles. Which is fine if that's how you measure power, but how do you measure power? I mean, there's lots of ways to measure it. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comments. Number 6. Helena Wayne, last rites Batman/Catwoman. I promise this is the last Helena on this list, although honestly I really do love a lot of what they do with all the Helena Waynes. I love Helena Wayne as a character and I wish that she was part of the main continuity. Let Batman and Catwoman be together and let them give us a Helena Wayne. This is probably my favorite version of Helena thus far. She is the one that appears as the daughter of Catwoman and Batman in Last Rites and Tom King's Batman/Catwoman series. This version of Helena is really just, I think, a little bit of an improvement of the redo that we saw with her character from New 52's Earth 2. She also has the investigative skills of her mother and father and is a skilled fighter and acrobat. Helena Wayne here goes on to become Batwoman in honor of both of her parents. Also, if you're wondering how Kate Kane feels about that, because you know, that's kind of her mantle, I'm not sure what she's up to in this reality, or if she exists. If you know more about Kate Kane here, please share with me in the comments. I'd love to learn more. I tried to do some research on that and I was like, I can't find anything, so I'm assuming Kate Kane is like, I feel nothing because I'm not here. Bye. Number 5. Damian Wayne. Probably one of the most powerful semi-natural born kids around, and definitely one of the most dangerous, is Damian Wayne. Damian is the son of Batman and sometimes villain, sometimes ally, Talia al Ghul. Depending on which story you were going with, his conception was pretty controversial, as it has been implied and interpreted mainly that Talia forced herself on Bruce in order to get pregnant with Damian. Damian also was only a semi-naturally born kid because he did not gestate in a womb, but instead was kind of like grown in a tube. He was raised initially by his mother, who then dropped him on Bruce's doorstep when he was around, I think, 8 or 10. Initially, he and his father didn't get along too great, partly because of Damian's spoiled attitude, and partly because, despite still being a kid, he was already a murderous, deadly assassin that had been raised mainly by the League of Assassins. So, you know, that's gonna be a problem. Especially as, you know, Batman has a moral code and Damian initially didn't really have much of a moral code. He was like, what's wrong? I can just decapitate people, that's fine. Why is it a big deal? They're bad guys. Number 4. Jason Todd. Everyone's favorite son of the Bat has got to be Jason Todd, or at least a lot of people's favorite son of the Bat. If that's not you, that's okay, but I know there's a lot of Jason Todd fans out there, so like, show yourselves. I see you. Well, Jason Todd has come a long way since he was first introduced in the comics, back when we knew him by the nickname Jason J. Todd. When he originally appeared in issue 357 of Batman, his backstory was actually very similar to former Robin, Dick Grayson. Of course, his backstory would be redone and it wouldn't be this anymore, but initially, in the New Earth continuity, Jason Todd was introduced as an orphan whose parents were both originally acrobats who had died. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Like Dick Grayson before him, Jason was taken in by Bruce Wayne and trained to become his new Robin. Bruce even seemingly adopts Jason in this version of the story, making him one of the Batman's adopted kids. And I think even in Prime Earth continuity we consider him an adopted kid, although I don't know if he's formally been adopted. Jason Todd now, however, has more of a challenging relationship with Bruce Wayne in the current Prime Earth continuity due to the fact that he has no problem killing villains when needed and often uses lethal force and firearms against them when he fights. Jason Todd is known for being one of the most gifted and brutal fighters in the DC universe. But Jason's not just a bruiser, he's also got a sharp mind as well, and perhaps even a bit of a magical power set since being revived in the Lazarus pits. There was also, I think for a time, we considered him to be immortal because of that, but I don't think that's a thing anymore. For those that want to be like, he's immortal! I don't know if that's true anymore, but it was a thing at one point that was implied. Number 3. Nightwing. While Dick Grayson is not born of Batman, he spent a good amount of time being raised by him and is actually an officially adopted child of Bruce Wayne's. After years of Dick being like an adopted son to Bruce decided to actually fill out the paperwork and finally make it official. So yeah, there's actually paperwork for this one, friends. Nightwing is one of the most powerful Robins, Bat family members, and sons of Batman around. He is a great all-around kind of powerful. Instead of dominating in one specific field when it comes to Batman's skill set, Nightwing does a great job of excelling sort of in all aspects equally. While some might think that this makes him weaker overall because he's not like a super big powerhouse in one area, I'd argue it makes him stronger overall as a character, as it means he has less weak spots in comparison to some of the other heroes, anti-heroes, and even villains in the multiverse who have trained under Batman. Nightwing is a great detective, fighter, acrobat, and he has a great heart, which is part of the reason he's such an amazing hero. Number 2. GHUL. GHUL is the daughter of Wonder Woman and Batman from the Dark Multiverse. We don't as of yet know what Dark Earth GHUL hailed from, only that she was raised and trained by both her parents before she turned to the dark side, joining the Batman Who Laughs, who in turn served Perpetua. During the Dark Knight's death metal event, GHUL ended up in a fight against Wonder Woman, who was amazed by her strength and her skills as a fighter. To read more about GHUL and her badass self, you can check out Dark Knight's death metal Trinity Crisis, and I know that the Dark Multiverse is kinda gone, but I do hope we get to learn more about GHUL and her backstory. I hope that's like not the only time we get to see her. She just seems like such an interesting character to me, and also I miss the Dark Multiverse. I just want more Dark Multiverse. Please, please. She ranks high on this list because due to her heritage, she possesses an Amazonian physiology like her mother. This means she is not likely someone that you would want to come up against in a fight. And she likely also possesses her father's enhanced intellect and sense of resourcefulness, making her an even more dangerous enemy to face. Also, it's really rare, I think, that Batman and Wonder Woman get together in realities and actually have kids. I feel like that's not usually a thing that happens, so she's a rare one. Number 1. Jarro. Jarro is probably the strongest child of Batman to have ever existed, at least obviously in my mind. When it comes to his potential for power, he could technically conquer the entire Earth if he wanted to. Fortunately, he doesn't want to. Jarro mainly wants to be a good son and become the best Robin ever in his father's eyes. He was grown by Batman from a tissue sample he'd had of Starro the Conqueror. Batman grew and raised Jarro himself, teaching him how to be a good alien starfish and a good hero. Jarro has teamed up with his dad before to help the Justice League, and there's almost nothing that he wouldn't do for Bruce. Due to his unique alien physiology, Jarro has a slew of powers available to him, the main one being telepathy and mind control. He's also heckin' smart, possessing genius level intellect. Plus, he's the cutest. Like, I'm just saying, if we're doing a top 10 cutest children of Batman list, or even the Justice League, cutest children of the Justice League, I think that Jarro would also end up at the top. Like, he's pretty cute. Just putting it out there. Number 10. Signal. Duke Thomas's parents were victims of the Joker, but before that, years before, they helped Batman during his 0 year, rescuing him and taking care of him. After Duke's parents were driven insane by the Joker, he became a vigilante, joining the team known as the Robins. Batman later offered him the opportunity to join the Bat family, and Duke Thomas took up the mantle Signal. He also found out he had metahuman abilities, making him one of the few superpowered members of the Bat family. Signal's powers allow him to perceive light differently from most humans. He can view light at superhuman speeds, giving him sort of clairvoyant abilities. Number 9. Batwoman. Batwoman is Kate Kane, Batman's cousin in the comics. This version of the character was part of a redesign first appearing in 2006. She was originally a member of the military who was discharged after they learned she was gay. Since then, with the help of her father and sometimes the help of her cousin, Bruce Wayne, she became a vigilante going as Batwoman. Batwoman is not just a skilled combatant but also boasts of genius-level intellect, like many of the other Batman family members, and can speak multiple languages. She has an indomitable sense of will that has allowed her to withstand supernatural and magical influences, and is just as stealthy as the Bat himself. Number 8. Red Hood. Red Hood was originally Batman's second Robin. His civilian name is Jason Todd, and he even ended up being adopted by Bruce. During his time as Robin, he ended up leaving Batman and heading out on a journey to find his birth mother. On that adventure, which Batman ended up finding him and joining him on, he ran into the Joker. His mother sold him out, and the Joker then beat Jason Todd almost to death before blowing him and his mother up with a bomb. Batman arrived too late to save Jason or his mother, and this has remained a failure which Batman considers one of his greatest. Todd would later return as Red Hood, being resurrected in part and guided for a time by Talia al Ghul. When he did return to Gotham, it was originally as somewhat of a villain. However, Jason would eventually join the Bat family again, having more of an anti-hero status as someone who isn't opposed morally to killing those villains that he feels deserves it, and bringing his own brand of justice to Gotham. Jason isn't against using guns, but also doesn't need them to be a badass. He has also been shown to be highly skilled with a sword. Duke retrained him after he was resurrected, also granting him the ability to be in control of his mind on a deeper level, giving him telepathic resistance and strong mind control defenses. Number 7. Damian Wayne. Damian Wayne is the son of Batman and Talia al Ghul, daughter of one of Batman's greatest enemies and sometimes ally, Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, depending on how you like to say it. Damian Wayne was dropped on Batman's doorstep when he was just a child, and having been raised by his mother, a skilled assassin, and raised along with the League of Assassins themselves, he proved to be a problem and challenge to Bruce originally, as he had both a sense of entitlement surrounding his being a Wayne and had no aversion to killing people. Due to his training from a young age, he has proved his prowess and efficiency in combat as a deadly opponent to those villains he comes up against. He has made quick work of well-known Batman villains like Victor Zsasz and Man-Bat. He's also proved in the past to be a worthy adversary for other Robins as well, although now he sees them more like brothers, so that's good. Number 6. Orphan. One of the deadliest members of Batman's team, in the same vein of Damian actually, but without the attitude really. Orphan is Cassandra Cain. She is the daughter of David Cain and Lady Shiva, and was rigorously trained from a young age to become a killing machine. She was not permitted to speak and never taught how to while growing up, instead communicating solely through body language, making her an expert combatant as she can use one's body language to read how and when they will attack. It's also very hard to intimidate Cassandra when it comes to the shock factor, as she was desensitized to death and violence from a very young age, being forced to witness multiple murders. She also has the potential to high-five you hard enough to break your hand. Fortunately, she's learned not to do that. Number 5. Batgirl. Batgirl isn't even just a Batgirl. She has been known by both the Batgirl mantle and her codename Oracle, a genius hacker, computer whiz, and master data sleuth for Batman and the leader of the Birds of Prey after she became paralyzed by the Joker from the waist down when he shot her through the spine. She not only has a brilliant mind, but she also is a skilled combatant. Even before she was Batgirl, she was known as a driven and determined young woman by those she trained with. Before even becoming Batman's protege, she studied martial arts and ballet, both of which helped to provide her with the strength, agility, and flexibility needed later on in combat. Bab's reflexes are so sharp we've even seen her dodge bullets in combat, and easily disarm opponents who are armed with guns. Truly a Bat family member that Batman would be proud of. Even when she felt shame surrounding letting herself be shot by the Joker, Batman was still by her side. She was worried he would also be disappointed in her, like she kind of was with herself, but he only expressed concern for her well-being. Barbara rarely, if ever, disappoints Batman. Number 4. Red Robin. Tim Drake is known for being one of the smartest Robins around. He is a brilliant detective, in fact so good that he is expected to be on the same level as one of the world's greatest detectives, Batman himself. In fact, it's also been implied that Tim Drake will likely one day surpass Batman when it comes to his detective skills. The way that he originally became Robin was through discovering the secret identities of both Batman and Robin, who was Jason Todd at the time. Following Todd's death, Drake noticed the Batman seemed to need a Robin to help give him balance, and ended up convincing the Dark Knight to take him under his wing, making him the third Robin of Batman. Number 3. Nightwing. Dick Grayson has taken Batman's place before, and what's more, he was fairly good at it. In fact, he's probably one of the most likely currently to be the person to take over for Batman, as long as he's got his memories, which have been gone more often than not in recent years. Dick was Batman's first Robin, and through the comics we've seen him become one of Batman's steadfast allies, almost appearing like an adoptive son to Bruce, destined to take up the mantle of Batman one day. Well, actually, maybe, if we're lucky, and the writers let it happen, we'll actually get to see him take up the mantle on a more permanent level. That'd be pretty cool. Number 2. AZRAEL. After Batman's back was broken by Bane, Sean Paul Valley was the one who Bruce turned to take up the Batman mantle in his absence. Jean Paul proved a powerful force when it came to his time as Batman, so powerful in fact that it took Batman, Robin, and Nightwing to take him down. The final showdown of course came down to AZRAEL and Batman, and in the end, Jean Paul surrendered the armor, cape, and cowl. Number 1. Alfred Pennyworth. Alfred might not have any superpowers, but he really doesn't need any to be considered one of the most powerful and influential members of the Batman family. Alfred is Batman's butler, his guide, his father figure, and has saved him in more than one way many times throughout the comics. As we can see currently in the Joker War story arc from the 2016 Batman run, which will be ending shortly, Batman is lost without Alfred. Alfred also has tons of past military experience and was a professional actor, and was sought after by the Wayne family to take his father Jarvis's place as their butler. In the Injustice series, Alfred also reveals there is no length he would not go to when it comes to protecting Bruce Wayne, who he thinks of as a son. After Superman breaks Batman's back, it's Alfred who forces him to back down, ingesting a pill which grants him superhuman strength and durability, allowing him to break Superman's nose. Yeah, Alfred's a badass.